That's the next episode, obviously with Will, and the guest today is Rebecca Galley. She's going to talk about herself a little bit, what she does, where she's been, and how she's got there. So without further ado, obviously you want to introduce yourself, Rebecca, and we'll go from there.
I'm Rebecca Galley. I'm the Chief Executive of Tornado Wire. Tornado is a manufacturer of wire fencing with our factory based in Cumbria. And I joined this business about 15 months ago.
Happy days. Obviously, Will, as we've been through a few episodes, but obviously Will is a chemical engineer who currently works in mine, and there was a little bit of crossover between the two of them. So obviously you were talking about a company in Finland. If you want to expand on that one for us.
Yeah, I was just explaining, before I worked for Tornado, I worked for a company called Hydroscand, who is a manufacturer of hydraulic hoses. And through customers and through Hydroscand, I came to be involved with a professor. She was a professor of off-road construction machinery, actually. But one of the projects that we were learning about was how to have mining machinery underground without running on diesel. So I think that was the crossover we got to. It sounds really fascinating if that's the work you're doing all the time.
Yeah. I work a bit more on the environmental side, but it's certainly seeing mining live. You said Finland. I was also in Finland this summer, and being on site or seeing even the 200-ton dumpers and things they have, it's a real feat of engineering.
Absolutely.
What excites us all about it, I think. It'd probably be great if you could walk us through like a career timeline or something, Rebecca. Show us the different sort of experiences you've had.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. Happy to. I mean, I'd like to just get it on the table before we go much further that I am not an engineer.
Yeah, that's fine. Don't worry.
So yeah, I don't know that I'm qualified to be on your podcast, but it's really great to be on your podcast.
So, I mean, I can step in a little bit there. So obviously, me and Rebecca have had a conversation before previously about what the engineering compass is and what we're trying to do. And obviously, there was actually a great story that I wouldn't mind you retelling about one of the young apprentices that you had, and how he was sort of unsure whether he wanted to get into it or not. And I thought when you told me that, it was a great example that not everything is as clear cut as yes or no, and grades are good, grades are bad. But one thing I will say before you give that story is, you may not be an engineer, but you've been in many engineering situations, and obviously you are now the CEO of a company that has, I'm assuming, a vast manufacturing process from start to finish.
Yeah.
And a lot of those situations, they need engineers, they need people like yourself, they need everyone to sort of organise how it comes together. And at the base of it, there's a hiring process. There's how people get into the industry. There's how people, progress and that sort of thing. So that's where I think you're more than qualified to talk about. But I will say, if you want to tell us the story about your young apprentice, I think will appreciate it as well.
So this is the young man that I mentioned got in touch with me before he was even going to go for the interview. So that's the one. In my previous company, I will come back to my career, but in my previous company, we were hiring an apprentice to join the team to work in hydraulics, basically. And, another side conversation is about the sort of apprenticeships and how they do and don't fit with businesses, but we'll come back to that. So this young man was going for an apprenticeship, coming for an interview for this role that we had. We wanted an apprentice. And he dropped me an email the night before the interview to say, not sure I can come, haven't got any safety boots. And I just wrote back saying, forget about the boots, just turn up, we'll work the rest of it out. And to his credit, he did turn up, and we did sort out some boots, and he got the job. And he, the transformation really from being a schoolboy, not sure about whether to turn up without the right shoes, to what he's doing now. He's a qualified hydraulic technician working on all kinds of machineries, out on his own, 24/7, doing really interesting work. But yeah, that journey that he went on, it just started with just turn up.
It's as simple as that. Sorry, Will, I didn't mean to cut you off there to say as simple as that.
Yeah, it could be quite funny, really, when you have a little joke about some shoes, but you could also give him the credit for site safety. Maybe he was born with it, safety first. But yeah, I think we definitely want to talk a bit about apprenticeships, because that's one contrast between myself and Rees, and we appreciate most people getting in the industry need to be aware of apprenticeships, look at them more as an access point to industry. So it'd be useful to hear about how what you said earlier about how apprenticeships fit or don't.
Yeah, so at Tornado, we employ, the total team is about 100 people, but we're employing at the moment 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 apprentices. One of them is a marketing apprentice and one of them is a logistics apprentice. In fact, it's more than that, it's 7. So we've got one in marketing, one in logistics, 3 in production, and another 2 are in engineering. One's just finished an engineering apprenticeship. So we have a team of engineers who help maintain and manage the machinery, exactly as you say, Rees. And then we've got other people in the business who've come through the apprenticeship. So a young man doing planning, he started out as a logistics apprentice. We've got some of the machine operators came through our apprenticeship program. So for us at Tornado, we think it's really important to do that, to bring people in, to train people so that people can continue in education and be at work. It works for them, it works for us. The challenge we had in the hydraulics company is that there isn't, or there wasn't, there might be now, but there wasn't a hydraulics apprenticeship. And even in the fencing world, I mean, it's not engineering focused specifically, but there's a apprenticeship for fencing contractors, but hardly no one knows about it. And the companies who are employing people to do that work don't know that it exists. So for the hydraulics, we ended up employing people on a mechanical fitting apprenticeship. But then our business didn't do welding. So to do the welding module, they had to go and work somewhere else, which is problematic. But we made it work anyway, because we wanted to bring young people in and we wanted to have apprentices and offer those opportunities. But it isn't as slick as it could be, in my opinion.
I mean, I think off the back of that, the next question is obviously, I will speak briefly about the fact that, as you said there, you made it work. And a lot of companies sort of see these hurdles alongside the sometimes pressure from the students to perform and provide both an active scheme that is beneficial, as well as alongside the fact that will it benefit them? And at the end of it, the employer has to decide then whether it's worth the potential of that person leaving, because at the end of apprenticeship, you've trained them up, they've got a qualification, what's the reason for them to stay? So I would say, I mean, one of the other ambassadors who can't be here today has got a list of questions, but I'll tackle them as we go. The main question I want to ask is, obviously, when someone comes into the industry, whether it's your industry, the engineering industry, or in Will's mining industry, what would you say candidates are most underprepared for when they first enter, essentially?
Are we talking about apprentices or are we talking about anybody? Apprentices are the least prepared for the world of work. Frankly, it is a big step from being at school and you think, oh, I'm going to do an apprenticeship, that will be like being at school. It isn't. And it's a huge step from being at school to then being at work, where obviously there's a structure in place and there's managers and team leaders and somebody is allocated to supervise the apprentice and there's the college and everything, but you've got to do it yourself, haven't you? You've got to find that drive to turn up and try and push yourself forward, and it takes people a couple of years, I think.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it was almost getting through in the deep end, because I had to do my apprenticeship whilst doing my degree. So I had, I think it was 12-hour day on a Thursday, 8 till 8 for my uni stuff, and then the rest of the time you're working. And obviously, I wouldn't say I was ever really someone that struggled with timekeeping and stuff, but you have to be on it. And all of a sudden, your week gets shorter, where you're having to do work after work. You've got deadlines in work then, and everything becomes more realistically. You realise that coming out of school, you wish you'd stayed in school, because you get to the end of school and you go, I can't wait to leave. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, well, it was very cushy. And then all of a sudden you have to think about bills and you become an adult. And it's like,
it is about becoming an adult.
It is that step.
School, everything's laid out, isn't it? There's a way you go to school every day, and then there's a timetable, and work doesn't necessarily work like that.
There are some similarities between people who just finish university and come straight into work.
Yeah.
Technically, it'd almost be the same just a few years later. Because when you go from university, yes, you have been perhaps more independent, but entering the world of work, I'd say that is one of the biggest things for everyone. So does that mean that brings out the interesting question about university versus apprenticeship? And you could be both at the same time. Do you think it benefits apprentices to have that exposure early on to industry?
But I'm actually a huge advocate of apprenticeships. Not that I'm averse to university. Sorry, get my words out. I'm not averse to university. I have a master's degree. So in terms of bringing young people into careers in engineering, manufacturing, or whatever walk of life, whether it, marketing or I don't know, legendary nursing, but bring people into the world of work, I think apprenticeships are brilliant because you've got that. Like our young lady who's doing a marketing apprenticeship, she is learning about marketing. She's getting the work experience. She's getting paid. She's getting a qualification along the way. And as a business, we're benefiting from her youth and enthusiasm and fresh ideas and all the things she's learning on the course. And because of, we're part of a bigger group, so we're an apprenticeship levy payer. So we've already paid for her from an employer's perspective. I mean, everyone is winning in that arrangement. I think it's a brilliant way to get into work. So again, doing a degree is a very different pathway, but to your point, as a degree student, whether you're an undergrad or a postgrad, you have to find, in my opinion, you have to find opportunities to get work experience. And we had last year a couple of postgraduates do placements with us, and I'm hoping that we can arrange for it. I think there's engineering undergraduate is going to come and do a placement with us in the summer. So again, we're offering those opportunities because for us, again, it's a huge win. We've got a really bright young person offering this very focused expertise on a specific problem in our business. And those individuals are then getting experience of what it's like in the real world of work, surrounded by adults and day-to-day business challenges. And, a gentleman I used to work for used to refer to the muck and bullets of daily trade, and that's what you need to have.
So yeah, we're not wrong. Yeah.
Yep. We also spoke about it before on the pod about having a broad experience. So it's not just about, for example, going to university and becoming very specialized in one field. Understand what underlies that in terms of those principles and be able to draw it all together, whether that's in engineering or I'm sure in your role, you have to do a lot, etc. So what sort of like key principles can people have? Or one question I had were, what are the key features of a high performing team or the people within that team?
So the principles of a high performing team are very different from the principles of a high performing individual, genuinely very different, because the team structure, so high performing teams have to have clarity of direction, and clarity of role, but also a massive amount is about trust and transparency. So you can't have a high performing team if the three of us are working together and I'm not telling you both the same story. That's never going to end well.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of things about a team to create high performance, about trust and communication. For an individual, I mean, we were talking about this actually as a management team, and again, you can frame this how you like. My personal view is turn up and try hard, but that someone else frames it as the 3 A's, which is attendance, attitude, and ability. So you leave school, you leave uni, you've got ability, you've got a certificate, you've got 3 years, 5 years worth of specialist knowledge in electrical engineering, chemical engineering, whatever it is. But you won't get anywhere in the world of work if you don't turn up and try hard.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it sounds really simple, but you'd be amazed how many people fall over one or both of those hurdles.
Yeah, definitely. There's one thing I want to quickly touch on. So obviously you said that you were looking to do placements.
Yes.
As an SME, where do you advertise those things? Because obviously me and Will have had a quick conversation before about, obviously, there's the use of LinkedIn, Indeed, there's loads of different job websites. But if someone was after your company specifically, where would it be that they would find that?
So I've got two different answers. So the postgraduate placements last year were directly connected with Warwick Business School.
Right. Okay.
We've been working with Warwick Business School. I studied there. I did a couple of presentations. I did one for a master's sort of forum, and I did another one about sustainability, actually. But they have a program of offering placements. So they recruit employers, and then the employers put the placements into a system where the relevant students can access and apply for them. And then the employers go to the university and interview the students, so that they have that interview experience as well. So that was directly through Warwick Uni. And in my former business, we did the same, actually 3 times with Nottingham Uni. So a lot of universities have these sort of employers engaged with the universities who offer placements, and the universities then advertise the placements to the students at that university.
Okay.
And that has worked fantastically well. So probably three in my previous company and two last year through Warwick. It's hugely beneficial for everybody. The one that we're talking to next year is more opportunistic. It's a young man who's just come to us. He's put himself forward and said, I'm looking for placements. Your business looks interesting.
I think there's quite a big disconnect now in the fact that you have all these websites and different places that people can go, that there is almost like a neglection of just cold emailing. But the problem is that I think a lot of people cold email big businesses where it's not someone picking up those emails at the end of a phone. It's probably a reply system. So you end up getting missed
I
out.
wouldn't recommend cold emailing.
Okay.
I would recommend, and again, that's probably my age, I don't know, but we've had, and this isn't for apprenticeships or placements, but for production operative roles near the factory, we've had a sort of, everything's gone full circle. We've had some young people turning up at the factory with a paper CV, literally knocking on the door saying, hey, I'm Rebecca, I'm really keen to work for this business. It looks great. You've got a reputation. I've just left school here. Who do I talk to? And that makes a really great impression. And you can't do that as a student if you're trying to approach businesses all over the country. But, this young man contacted me directly through LinkedIn. I'm not, please don't, I don't, after this one, contacted me directly through LinkedIn.
I might cut that bit out for your own sake.
Target the person you think you want to talk to, and SMEs are actually a really great place to start, because one of the things that, again, as you've got graduates and apprentices who don't know where to start with approaching businesses, equally, there's a lot of SMEs who'd love to have a placement student and they don't know where to go to get one.
Yes, that's what we're trying to do.
Any business leaders
Bridge that gap.
How to do it.
Is bridging that gap, I think. I mean, obviously you work with Warwick. Would you say that they, obviously having only worked with Warwick, would you say that they prepare the students well for the industry? Or is there quite a big jump between what they've learned and what they're sort of expecting when they come into the workplace?
I think Warwick is exceptional, to be honest. But having said that, I did also work with postgraduate students from Nottingham, and they were great too. There's one in particular who stands out, who was brilliantly commercially minded, as in the question he was answering was about, were there opportunities for hydraulic hoses in renewable energy market?
Yeah.
And what he came back with was fantastic. It was almost a ready to go marketing plan. So hugely valuable. I think Warwick does prepare students for the placements, but it's all part of the same thing, isn't it? If the university is inviting in employers and creating these scenarios where students can be interviewed, that's all about preparing them for
it is. That's exactly that. Yeah. We've only got Will for probably like 10 minutes max. Didn't know if Will, if you had any more questions that were burning on your mind before I run.
No, I'm enjoying the conversation.
Okay. Well, I'll step in there. So obviously a lot of people now, as we briefly spoke about before, is the big thing is experience. And it's finding a way of getting that experience before you go to a company, so you have something to talk about rather than just every other generic university project or high school project or whatever you've done up to that point. So from your perspective, it's probably more about the mindset of the student than
Very much so.
the technical ability. Because I know a lot of the people that come to me, their first panic is, I don't know whether I'm smart enough to do this. And I can happily say from my perspective, I was never the smartest person in the room. I was always the one that had to do. So if people had to do a week's worth of revision, I was doing 3. I had to just work that a little bit harder, and it only clicked for me in university. A lot of people will never get to that point of realizing what works for them until it just works. So obviously from your career as it stands now, what would you say is the biggest lesson that you've learned that you'd be able to pass on to someone who is looking to step into the first set of work shoes, essentially?
Goodness, that's a huge question.
It is. I like to put you on the heels there, because I think it could be something you've learned recently, it could be something you learned at the start, but just something that if you said to someone, here's a bit of information, here's some advice, because I've had some ones that, were a couple of words long, some that have been a full paragraph. People are giving me a certain type of workbook to look through. There's so much stuff that's available out there. But from your perspective, if it was me coming to you now, I said, I really want to get into your industry. What is one thing that you would value from me, whether that's interview or CV or anything like that?
One thing that I would, it's the same answer I've already given you, which is attitude.
Right.
Really, genuinely. And, if 10 really positive, enthusiastic people with the right skill set turned up asking for a placement, we couldn't accommodate everybody. But, and experience doesn't have to be experience of the thing you're about to do. Experience. So here you go. If you want a nugget, experience is what you get just after you needed it.
There you go. That's what we wanted to hear. Something like
Right.
that.
So I've been in some scenarios in my career. I can remember one when I'd just taken on an operations director role, and the whole business is looking at me to solve some enormous problem. And I had to sit on my own in a dark room for 20 minutes because I had no idea what the answer was. But when you're in those moments, you mustn't give up. You have to rise to the moment. Sorry, Will.
Learning from the struggles of things.
Yeah, exactly. So, we sorted that particular issue out. It took many months, but I came up with something to do in that moment. And that's the point. Then I had experience, didn't I? But I didn't before the thing had happened. And, you can turn up, if you turn up and say, I'd love to do a placement, I'm open to suggestion, my particular interest is mechanical engineering, and I think that's relevant to you. And then if I say, what work experience do you have? I'm thinking of a particular individual. Well, I've worked in McDonald's every weekend for the last 3 years. As an employer, I think that is amazing to have held that down. I mean, that's hard work. You're on your feet. It's relentless, isn't it?
Yeah.
You just think, really?
It's commitment, isn't it?
Work ethic.
Yeah, it's showing that you can commit to something for a long period of time. I mean, off of the back of that, if there is one thing as an employer that you could change on how, you attract and develop young talent in in your young engineers, what would you change? Because obviously apprenticeships, they all work. They're a quite consistent thing now. They've been around for a while. If there's one thing you could change in that space, what would you look to change?
Do you mean about how to attract people?
Well, it's so you attract and you have to develop people. So in that space, yeah, what would you change that would essentially be a good step forward?
The answer is probably not what you're expecting. So I think a lot of it comes down to commitment, as much from the employer as from the other person involved, whether that's an apprentice or a student. Going back to the point, some of the individuals I'm talking about might know who they are, but one young manager who was responsible for an apprentice said to me, "It's like having a child. It's like having another child." I'm like, no, it's not like that. It is that.
It's exactly
Because they're still, under 18, and we need to bring them up into the world of work. So that commitment the other way, I think, I think employers sometimes expect too much from young people.
Yeah.
You know, you don't just arrive at work aged 17, 18, 19, 21. They're not, you haven't got 20 years of life experience and have raised your own kids. It's just, you just haven't got those perspectives.
I think
That's perspective.
go on, Will.
I wanted to just go back slightly onto attitude.
Yeah.
And I wanted to take it back to a CV. So of course, I love what you're saying, and that's really good. And perhaps people need to understand they need to not just look at big companies. Like I work for an SME, and there's lots of different opportunities available. But if you are just sending out your CV and you've got a cover letter and a CV, is there anything you've seen that sort of demonstrated attitude through words on paper, or do you think it is you have to be told up to that interview? Because that's another thing people can struggle with is getting the interviews. And of course, if you get the reps in, you send it to enough people and you look broad enough, like you will get an opportunity. But how could you convey that on a CV, perhaps?
That's a good question. That was a good question.
Less is more with CVs. So again, without any disrespect to any individuals, as a business manager, especially in an SME, you haven't got a lot of time.
Yeah.
You really have. So if someone's going to send me a 10-page letter, that's not what I want. So you keep it to 1 page.
Yeah.
There's a big debate about whether you should or shouldn't include photographs. I like it. I think it's
Oh, really? Okay.
personality. It's like, who is this person? Show me who you are. And maybe that's even the point. Who are you? I'm Rebecca. I'm from Manchester. I play in a band. No, I've been an army cadet. I'm trying to think what I was doing when I was a teenager. These things. And, then I'm seeking opportunities in whatever. And then I have these qualifications. And by the way, I've done whatever work, whether it's paid work or volunteering work, and just make it really clear. I guess that's the best you can do on a page, isn't it?
I like the personality element that you added in there. Like,
Yeah.
is I think increasingly employers will see ChatGPT written sort of about meetings, and you do need to keep it personal and stand out from those other 20. Otherwise, it's easy to see which ones are tricky.
Yeah, exactly. It's too much. Yeah, crikey. If a company's written a brief in AI and a candidate's written a response in AI, that's quite vanilla, isn't it?
Yeah, it's just two computers talking to each other. That's right, isn't it? That is, to be honest, I want to press that photo point. I think from my experience and the research I've done and the hiring managers that I've spoken to now, I think the picture aspect is a great idea for SMEs that have someone physically reading them. The larger companies now will have, an applicant tracking system that will do it all through a scan. And I personally wouldn't press someone to do a picture on those applications.
No, it's you're right not to. So for those things where it is a machine doing the reading, you have to minimize any format and you have to keep it, just keep it to text.
Cheers, Will. Thanks for jumping in, mate.
Well, great speaking.
You sorry about staying longer tonight. No problem. Let's stay connected. Enjoy the rest of it.
Perfect. Cheers, Will. Have a good one. But yeah, I mean, to be honest, I think most of the questions that I was going to ask have sort of come back to this point of attitude. It all comes down to that, how you present yourself on that first day, or the interview, or anything like that. I think, what did, bear with me.
I didn't get to tell Will about my career, but my career journey.
We got straight into it. I mean, feel free, if you want to tell, I've got to try and search for a question that one of the lads has sent to me.
Yeah.
If you want to tell me a little about what you've done. And then
this point about the beginning of my career is relevant because I left school. I didn't go to university at that point in my life. I had really good grades, but I couldn't get a job. And I had a number of interviews. To be fair, I didn't have trouble getting interviews. But this was probably my, 9th, 10th plus interview at an aerospace company. And the gentleman who I met, I actually got a bit cross, not with him personally, but in the interview. Because he would say, well, you haven't got any experience. And this is the point that I think we were talking about. It's like, no, I haven't. But I've got 4 A grade A levels. I've got a really big desire to work. I am a bright, capable, willing person, and nobody will give me a chance. How will I ever get any experience?
Yeah.
And he hired me that same day.
See, I think that you're probably right there in the sense that showing, don't get wrong, there's probably a very fine line, but showing a bit of personality in that you want it, because if you go in there and you sort of turn up and you sit there and you act like, oh, I've got this interview, but I'm sort of not really that fussed. I'd rather be, out with my friends or something.
Yeah.
If you can just put a bit of oomph in, show that you're interested, and realistically, the one thing that a lot of people ask me is, should they do more applications? And the one thing I always say is, it's not about doing more; it's about having quality ones that you can sort of rely on, if that makes sense. So for me, when I started, I'd send loads out, and you probably get a couple back that would say, let's have a chat, let's get the interview going. But I think the one thing that people come across now is that, one, they don't either research the company well enough, and two, they don't change the CV to match what the job description they're actually going for is. And that can be quite a difficult thing to do if your CV is pretty, I wouldn't say generic, but it's very basic, because you're starting the industry young, you've not got much experience, and obviously the qualification you have will be the same as the next person. So I think from your perspective, I think Will's already sort of asked the same question. I'll skip that one. I was going to say, how does someone make themselves look good on a CV to catch your eye? What are things that they can put down, obviously aside from the generic qualifications and
It's about, I don't know about putting it on a CV, but maybe like make a call or write a covering letter or something. But I've had some careers advice recently, so obviously many years into my career. But the point is, I think what you were saying, don't necessarily apply for everything, but a lot of the careers advice I receive really is about focus. So I'm not going to fit in every company.
Yep.
And every company isn't going to fit with me. And it's about finding that alignment, isn't it? So
It is.
a lot of it might come down to what you're really interested in, what drives you. If you're going to spend, the other thing to think about as when you're applying for roles, I mean, just get going, get yourself in there somewhere. But maybe a bit down the line is, what really am I fascinated by? Because you're going to spend your whole life potentially doing this thing.
Exactly.
So, and it's got to fit with you. It's got to match your values. It's got to make you want to get out of bed in the morning.
Exactly. And I think what I was going to say was, so Abu, who can't be here today, he's just got himself in a placement with Red Bull Powertrains next year.
Fantastic.
So he's absolutely smashed it. And the one thing that he hadn't prepared himself for is his first application. He went to Williams and he didn't get it. And we had a conversation before. We had conversations all the way up leading up to it. We did all the interview prep and everything with him. And then the night before, he said, what if I don't get it? I said, it doesn't matter. I said, it really doesn't, because you're going to go in there. It's your first interview. And what makes it 10 times worse is you really, really want it.
Yeah.
And when you really want it, they'll know that. And he got through to the final stages. Obviously, he didn't manage to get it. But I said, if you can show that enthusiasm at any other company, whether it's the next one or the one after that, you will get it.
Yeah.
Because you're so involved, because they know you're enthusiastic about it. And then he did a great job afterwards, because then when he did the LinkedIn post, he connected with all the people that he'd spoken to at Williams. And then he got a bit of more information out of them, things that they would do differently. There's so many different avenues of connection and networking down that side of things. And then when we sat down again, he was a bit miffed. He was like, oh, here's some things I could have done better. And I said, well, what's stopping you from taking that into the next interview? Now you know what it's going to be like interviewing for an F1 company. It takes a little bit of the pressure off for the next one, because you go in there going, right, here's what I did last time, what I think I did good. And the stuff that I think I missed out, there you go. Tick some more boxes, and then here we are. He got his dream placement. His question for you, because he can't be here, because him and the other lad, Khaled, they're both exam season. So they're both hard at work. Both of them have had exams. I think one of them had 2 exams today. So he's a bit knackered. So he said, essentially, or something along the lines, I'm paraphrasing, When someone is broken in the industry, what next? How do they utilize what they've got at that point to make the next step in their career?
That's very much up to them to drive it. And some companies, I'd like to tell you that Tornado is obviously doing this. We are doing this. Every individual has a personal development review, and most companies will do this. Any decent company will do this. So we'll sit down at the beginning of the year and say, how are you? What was great about last year? What are you enjoying about the job? What would you like to do differently? What are your ambitions?
Yeah.
And then if somebody says, well, I want to progress as a machine operator to a different level, or one of our engineers, a mechanical engineer, I want to learn to be an electrical engineer. And we said, that's absolutely fantastic. We need an electrical engineer. So he's now doing those qualifications, aced his exams, I think. He's got some practical work to do now. So work with your employer.
Yeah.
And wherever possible, a good employer will support you to develop because it's in everybody's interests. But drive it yourself. If you're in a business where that isn't the case, I mean, you always want to be loyal to a point to the company that's brought you in. But if there's a better opportunity that works better for you, fits your values, meets your ambitions, look outside the business that you're in.
Controversial.
Obviously, it's always a shame when you've brought someone in and trained them up and then they choose to go somewhere else. But at the same time, it's a big win because that's another great person in the industry overall, which in your company, but in the industry overall. And, having good engineers is good for the economy in a broader sense.
It's not just that; it's filling the gap now, isn't it?
Yeah,
It's quite a big skills gap.
In my career, I've had occasions where I've been at the point of having done everything I believe I can do and not come to the point where I'm not adding the value at the same pace to the business I'm working for. I'm not learning anything new. And I've worked then in a different business to make that step for my own career. So you have to own it. But hopefully, particularly at the start of your career, the company that you're working for will help you to develop.
Yeah, you're not wrong. I think going back to what you said before about a company giving the right structure and the right people in place to help a student grow within the company. In terms of that, I think the one thing that I didn't realize until probably a couple of years ago was that those people, as you say, when he said it's like having a child, it is, but also the person who is then in charge of those people has to be able to create an environment that allows mistakes to be made. Because when I first started, mistakes were a dread. But at the start, they're the only way you can learn. And in those environments where the consequences aren't massive, and don't get me wrong, I got put on projects pretty early. The consequences were massive. But you should have someone already, checking over what you're doing to make sure that those consequences aren't ever going to touch you. But until I made mistakes where I got, for lack of a better phrase, a telling off, it becomes a very real thing and you go, oh, I won't do that again. Like when I first started where I am now, I changed over from aerospace to manufacturing and panel design and things like that. So it was very different from what I used to do. And on one of the first machines, they had a motor. And on the motor, there's a brake. And there's also an encoder that goes on the motor so it tells what position it's in. And there's a built-in encoder, and then there's also an add-on encoder. These two things are next to each other on the build schedule, and you tick one, you tick the other. You tick one and it's right, you tick one and it's wrong. And for me, I ticked the wrong one because someone said to me, add an encoder on, you go, oh, built-in encoder, that must be the right one. You wouldn't want an add-on one, would you? You'd want a built-in. That ended up costing $2,500 for a new motor on a tight build schedule because basically the built-in one doesn't work with the system that had been implemented previously.
But anybody told you this?
No, to be fair, no one had told me this, but then when it came out, my manager said to me, he was like, look, it's not ideal, but he said it was probably, up to me to check it. And he said, but there's a silver lining. He was like, you won't do that again, will you? It's like, No, I will not. And I think, to be honest, I can put an emphasis on the fact that having someone like my current manager or like yourself who wants to push these sorts of things and get new people in and help people develop is the most valuable thing a company can have. You can have a bunch of great engineers, but if they're not interested in helping the next people and pass on their skills, when they leave, their skills leave with them. And this is what's happening at the moment is there's a lot of jobs now that aren't being filled because the people that have got all the skills are left. The people coming in are all having to learn, and then you have this big gap, and then there's the problem of companies now. It's quicker just to get a contractor in.
Yeah, there's a limited pool and it's very expensive from the commercial standpoint. It's no good in the long run. So I want to say two things back to you on that. One is that the structure within the business to incentivize the experienced engineers to train the younger engineers has to be right. And that's not the young engineer's problem. That's a structural problem in the businesses.
Yeah.
You know, there has been, I've heard of, not in my personal experience, but I've heard of tension and when there's like a lot of young people and a lot of much older people. So there has to be a good system in place within the business. And the other thing I'm going to say is quite controversial, aimed at other business leaders. I know a lot of business leaders, and some of them have a propensity to fair, not the ones I spend most time with, but some business leaders will moan about, oh, there's no engineers, there's no tech, but then, so what are we all going to do about it? If we don't all do something about it, train people, have apprentices, offer placements, whatever it is, and there never will be, will there? It's not someone else's problem to solve.
Exactly. And I think the one thing you've done that a lot of companies who are struggling to find these apprentices could benefit from, get in your local college. There is nothing that stops you from getting to your local college. And as you say, once you've got the exposure, you can do the presentations, you can do open days. And all of a sudden, you've gone from having a pool of maybe 10 people that might have seen that ad online. Realistically, I'm going to be brutally honest with most people now, most companies, no one's looking at your website until they get an interview. So if you can't find a good way of advertising what you do as a company alongside the jobs you have available, people aren't going to see it.
We actually had good engagement with a TikTok video we put out when we had a vacancy recently.
Yeah, it's mad. It's anything go viral.
Me, but it worked.
Exactly. It's honestly, I think now one of the ambassadors, he went nuts. He went viral on TikTok just from recording what he did day to day.
Yeah.
I think over the course of 4 months, I think he amassed something like 10 million views over a few videos, and he had like 30,000 followers. And unfortunately, as much as, you know, people don't want to admit it, the landscape is changing on how people receive information.
Yeah, it is.
And so it's making that change to, as one would say, get down with the kids, and that makes me feel sick saying it, but it's a completely different situation to how you would expect, because me and Will talk about it before, is he made a post the other day about how he's traveling to Canada to speak at a conference. I didn't see that post, and it's been up for a couple of days, and they're the sorts of things I want to see, when instead I'm getting pushed a bunch of random other stuff that isn't really relevant to me. So it's now, where do you go to not only advertise but tell people about what's going on, how you're tackling it. But I will finish this with one question.
Ooh, I've got a question for you though.
Go on,
Go fire.
fire away. You fire away first.
I wanted to. There's quite loads of stuff I've wanted to say actually that we haven't had time for. But one question I do want to ask,
Yes.
and I would be irresponsible not to. What about girls?
So, what about girls?
Are there many? Do they have different challenges in the recruitment process?
So I think the main problem that when I do speak to girls within the industry is
Young women. Sorry, I shouldn't say girls.
Sorry, young women. Yes, within the industry, is not that there's any different challenges. I think they just don't know what's involved. I think there's this big perception that women in engineering is a woman in overalls with grease all over her. But in reality, that I work with 3 or 4 women. I think within our team anyway, there's more in the procurement team, there's more in the management team. One of the engineers that sits next to me, she's French, and she's great. She does software, she does electrical design like I do. I think there's also an element of, don't get me wrong, this may sound odd, but businesses want women. They
Yes,
they want to expand, and I think the best way to get them is by advertising what you do and showing people that it's not just the stereotypes of what an engineer is. Because engineering as a whole there's so many different elements, and as Will said, he's a chemical engineer. He's in mining, and I didn't know that was something that matched up until he told me. But the women, I mean, I've worked with probably 15 to 20 women out of the probably a couple hundred now that I've spoken to with queries and questions about how do they get in, if they're going to get in, where's the best place for them to go. But I wouldn't say there's any different challenges. I'd just say the perception of engineering is fed wrong currently, because it's fed towards the young lads that are in college. That's the way that it's done.
I would agree with you, actually. I would agree that young women rule themselves out of engineering careers too early, in my opinion. That engineering, particularly manufacturing, has a bad rep.
Yeah.
It looks like everything's, we're all working in caves covered in.
Exactly.
But the other thing I did just want to make the point about, why I bring it up, is that I'm not talking about engineering here. I'm talking about management, even senior roles. There's this divide between, it's like a confidence gap. Like, men are, I don't know whether it's society or genetic, I don't want to get into that, but more confident than women. A man will see a list of 10 job criteria, think, well, I can do 5 of them, I'll apply for this. And a woman will see a list of 10 job criteria and think, I can only do 9 of them, I'm not going to apply.
To be honest, I think that's more common in most jobs than you think.
Right.
I think for a lot of the apprentices that I speak to now, they say, here's a job application, I want to apply for it, but I can't do X, Y, and Z. And the first question I always ask them is there an online course to learn, 3 of those 5 things you can't learn? And if there is, even if it's free, even if it's an hour, go and do it.
Yeah.
Do it, take all 3 of them off. And when you get there, you may not know everything. I mean, like you'll tell me, and I'll tell people myself. I've been doing this probably a lot less time than you have, and there's still stuff that everyone doesn't know. You're never going to know everything, and I feel like it's constantly learning. It's having that ability and the willingness to learn those things. And I think even if you can do 5, if you put your CV in and you show that you're willing to learn, and that's where those courses come, even if you put them in the bottom and they take 15 minutes to do, show me that willingness to say, look, I've looked into it, I've looked into the software, I've looked into whatever the company uses beforehand, may be more useful than the person that has the 9. And I think the confidence comes from having been put yourself in them situations to thrive or to fail. So if you go to an interview, you go, right, I've got 10 out of things I need, but you go in there, you bomb the interview, we've all done it. And then you come out and you go, oh, well, now I've learned from that. When you apply for the one that you've got the 6 out of the 10 things, then all of a sudden you're more confident, you can articulate yourself better in those situations. And then the 6 becomes the 9 because all of a sudden you can match that gap. Personally, I haven't seen a massive confidence difference in the people I work with. I'd say the women that I've previously worked with are more confident than me.